Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Tanvi Taneja, coming up in the next 30 minutes. India-US signed terms of reference for the first phase of a bilateral trade deal. In-person negotiations in May, deal expected by year-end. Singapore to hold elections on May 3rd amid cost of living and trade concerns. Prime Minister Wong says the city-state is at a critical juncture amid global uncertainties. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu tells French President Emmanuel Macron that establishment of a Palestinian state would be a huge reward for terrorism. And India expected to experience above-average monsoon this year, says India's Met Department. El Niño conditions to remain neutral. India and the United States have signed the terms of reference for its first part of a bilateral trade deal. Both sides agreed in February to work on the first phase of a bilateral trade deal that will be concluded late this year, with a view to reaching bilateral trade worth $500 billion by 2030. The two countries will start virtual discussions on the deal this month, with the next round of in-person talks scheduled for mid-May. India's overall exports showed steady growth in March 2025, with both exports and imports registering year-on-year increases. The total export, which combines merchandise and services, has increased to $73.61 billion in March this year, up from $71.71 billion in March last year. The growth reflects continued resilience in key sectors of the economy. The data shows a sharper increase on the import front, with overall imports climbing to $77.23 billion from $73.63 billion a year ago. Now, the US is turning up the heat in its trade war, this time targeting two of the world's most crucial sectors, pharmaceuticals and semiconductors. President Trump is pushing forward with plans to slap new tariffs on imported medicine and chips, calling foreign dependence a national security risk.
Donald Trump's tariff saga refuses to cease. The rollercoaster ride has already got the global markets facing headwinds. Now the national security probes have been initiated on two products, pharmaceuticals and semiconductors. The probes are a precursor for imposing tariffs on chips and drugs. Trump says he expects to impose tariffs on imported pharmaceuticals in the not-too-distant future.
We don't make our own drugs, our own pharmaceuticals. We don't make our own drugs anymore. The drug companies are in Ireland and they're in lots of other places, China. And all I have to do is impose a tariff. The more, the faster they move in. The higher the tariff, is very simple. It's inversely proportional. The higher the tariff, the faster they come.
The Commerce Department has launched formal probes into both sectors. Commerce Secretary insists the move will bring manufacturing back home.
We need to have semiconductors, we need to have chips, and we need to have flat panels. We need to have these things made in America. We can't be reliant on Southeast Asia for all of the things that operate for us. So what he's doing is he's saying they're exempt from the reciprocal tariffs, but they're included in the semiconductor tariffs, which are coming in probably a month or two. So these are coming soon. You shouldn't think this is really outside of it. Really think of it as being included in the semiconductor space, much like pharmaceuticals.
But the move is already raising red flags. Drug makers warn it could lead to shortages and make medicines more expensive. Chip makers say that tariffs could disrupt production just as the world is racing to meet the tech demand. Markets had a mixed reaction to the development. Wall Street saw a modest rebound, with investors clinging to hopes that exemptions for some tech goods like smartphones and computers might soften the blow. But Trump has signaled those exemptions won't last forever. Meanwhile, efforts to strike trade deals with many partners are also gathering pace. Treasury Secretary Stock Bessent has hinted momentum in talks with individual countries on reaching trade deals but offered little details. Talks have begun with Vietnam and were to start with Japan on Wednesday, then South Korea next week. These nations, on their part, have started their own efforts to counter the effects. The timeline or chances of any deal with China remains a question mark. Meanwhile, Taiwan's economy minister said on Tuesday that the island will simulate the impact of any US tariffs on the semiconductor industry. South Korea, which is home to chip giants like Samsung, announced an emergency $4.9 billion boost for its semiconductor industry to counter the fallout. South Korea's finance minister also said on Tuesday that Seoul will try to delay reciprocal tariffs as much as possible by negotiations with the United States. Back in America, a legal advocacy group on Monday asked the US Court of International Trade to block Trump's sweeping tariffs on foreign trading partners, arguing the president overstepped his authority. The lawsuit asks the court to block enforcement of the tariffs and declare Trump lacked the authority to impose them. The New York-based Court of International Trade is a US federal court with broad jurisdiction over most trade-related matters. Bureau Report, DD India.
The American technology giant AMD announced on Tuesday that the company is set to begin chip production at Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company's new Arizona facility, marking a significant step in expanding US-based AI server manufacturing.
Well, I think overall, we all see that it's a very dynamic situation right now in the overall supply chain. I think we're very lucky that we have a broad and a very deep set of partnerships. So we believe we can work very closely with our partners to manage any of the supply chain issues.
Meanwhile, a legal advocacy group has asked the U.S. Court of International Trade to block President Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs on foreign trading partners, arguing the president overstepped his authority. The lawsuit was filed by the non-partisan Liberty Justice Center on behalf of 5 small U.S. businesses that import goods from countries targeted by these tariffs. The businesses range from a New York wine and spirits importer to a Virginia-based maker of educational kits and musical instruments. The lawsuit challenges Trump's April 2 Liberation Day tariffs, as well as duties he separately levied against China. The Trump administration faces a similar lawsuit in Florida federal court, where a small business owner has asked a judge to block tariffs imposed on China. Trump imposed 10% tariffs on goods from all countries and higher tariffs for countries the administration says have high barriers to U.S. imports, most of which he later paused for 90 days. China's President Xi Jinping urged Vietnam to join forces in upholding free trade before wrapping up a visit to Hanoi on Tuesday, which President Donald Trump said was aiming to, quote, screw the United States. Xi visited Vietnam as part of a Southeast Asia tour that will include Malaysia and Cambodia, with Beijing trying to position itself as a stable alternative to Trump as leaders confront U.S. tariffs. The Chinese leader called on his country and Vietnam on Monday to oppose unilateral bullying and uphold the stability of the global free trade system, according to Chinese state media. Hours later, Trump told reporters at the White House that their talks were aimed at hurting the United States. China and Vietnam signed 45 cooperation agreements on Monday, including supply chains, artificial intelligence, joint maritime patrols, and railway development. Xi said at a meeting with Vietnam's top leader To Lam on Monday that their countries were standing at the turning point of history and should move forward with joined hands. Lam said after the talks that the two leaders reached many important and comprehensive common perceptions. Vietnamese President Luang Quong held a meeting with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping on Xi's last day of a trip to Hanoi. China and Vietnam signed 45 documents and agreements aiming to boost ties between the two neighboring countries amid the tariff tensions with the United States. After a 2-day stop in Hanoi, Xi will continue his Southeast Asian trip by visiting Malaysia and Cambodia from Tuesday to Friday. Now, China has ordered its airlines not to take any further deliveries of Boeing jets on Tuesday. Beijing has also asked that Chinese carriers halt purchases of aircraft-related equipment and parts from US companies. This comes in response to the US decision to impose 145% tariffs on Chinese goods. Meanwhile, this move is expected to raise maintenance costs for the jets flying in the country. The US and China have been embroiled in a tariff war triggered by US President Donald Trump's trade policies. Now, despite current trade troubles, global business has been pretty strong over the past few years, even in Germany. The country might be in or near a recession, but at least stock markets are up, pointing to some companies performing very well. Now, they opened their books and we are learning about the salaries paid to their respective CEOs. Lars Walter is with Deutsche Welle and joins me from Berlin now on the story. Lars, you've looked at that manager's salary list. What can you tell us?
Thanks for having me. Well, first and foremost, I can tell you that top managers have once again been doing very well. Looking at the 40 companies listed in Germany's blue chip DAX index, their CEOs have seen their salaries and bonuses go up 10.4% in 2024 compared to the year before. That's after a relatively meager raise of just 2% the year before. Good news? Not so much, at least not if you're not yourself the person pocketing all that money. Here's the problem. The profit these 40 companies made has only gone up just about 1% on average, though, so that begs the question, why would salaries at the top rise 5 times stronger? And it's likely because a company's stock price plays into these calculations, and shares are up 19% for the DAX in 2024. So it does seem that CEO salaries are much more tied to the perception investors have of any given company than they are to the business that the company is really doing. And that is especially worrisome as regular salaries are not keeping up at all. The gap between average salaries and those at the top is widening again, and it's widening so drastically that around half of those DAX companies had to put their payment plans on the agenda to be discussed at upcoming shareholder meetings. That's as some companies are even planning to raise their previously agreed upon maximum payout limits. So one can see how they're expecting these top salaries to continue to rise, which a lot of investors don't like to see.
Okay, and last, do you see this kind of excess with the unreasonably high salaries across the board in Germany's DAX?
Absolutely. As for a headline number, the average payday for a German DAX CEO is 6.3 million euros. But of course, there's vast differences. SAP CEO Christian Klein took home 18.9 million euros last year. His company, of course, is the biggest and most valuable company in the country, a tech giant with truly global business. And then there's Vincent Vonnery of personal care giant Beiersdorf, who was paid over 13 million. It was almost as much as Mercedes-Benz boss Ola Källenius made. And then there's the CEOs of automaker BMW and insurance company Allianz, who also made just over 10 million each. Now, I would say that among those top earners, Vincent Vonnery of Beiersdorf sticks out. He's benefited from a large multi-year bonus that was paid out after 5 years of overperforming. And even critics have said that that particular CEO has moved the company ahead and has developed a long-term strategy that is expected to strengthen the business for years to come. Now, such long-term success stories are obviously what a lot of experts want to see more of. They recommend that more often CEO pay is tied to long-term goals, while they're admonishing companies for often setting a very low performance bar for CEOs to justify extra short-term bonuses. That often doesn't help the company at all, and it only actually benefits the boss.
Thank you, Lars, for all those updates. Lars Walter joining us from DW Berlin. On to West Asia now. A senior Hamas official has indicated that the group will likely respond to a new Israeli ceasefire proposal within 48 hours. The proposal presented through mediators, Egypt and Qatar, offers a 45-day ceasefire in exchange for the release of half of the remaining hostages held in Gaza and the entry of aid. Israel has also demanded disarmament of Hamas and all Palestinian armed factions in the Gaza Strip as a condition for a permanent end to the conflict. Earlier, Hamas informed the mediators that it was willing to agree to any proposal that includes a permanent ceasefire, a full Israeli withdrawal from the Gaza Strip and the entry of aid. However, the group rejects any clauses that would see it forced to disarm, calling it a red line and non-negotiable. Meanwhile, Israel confirmed that it had eliminated the head of a Hamas Nukba force terror cell, Hamza Wail Mohammed Asafar, in Hamas's Deir al-Balat battalion 2 weeks ago. Israeli Defense Forces said that Asafar participated in the October 7th attack as well as a hostage release ceremony in February. Now, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told French President Emmanuel Macron on Tuesday that the establishment of a Palestinian state would be a huge reward for terrorism. A statement released by Netanyahu's office said that the two leaders spoke over phone, and the Israeli Prime Minister expressed to the French leader his strong opposition to the establishment of a Palestinian state, stating that it would be a huge reward for terrorism. On his part, French President Emmanuel Macron called for an end to the war in Gaza and said that the ordeal of Gaza civilians must end. You're watching DD India Live, still to come on the show. Meta's Mark Zuckerberg disputes US antitrust case in trial testimony. Registrations begin for the 52-day Amarnath Yatra 2025 from July 3 to August the 9th. And India's Hajj quota rises to 175,000 in 2025.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
It will hold the next general election on May the 3rd, for which nominations will be filed on April 23rd. The vote will be the first electoral test for Prime Minister Lawrence Wong, who succeeded longtime Premier Lee Hsien Loong as the leader of the People's Actions Party, PAP, in May 2024. The ruling PAP is almost certain to dominate and win more seats, as it has in every vote since independence in 1965. Meta platform CEO Mark Zuckerberg took the stand on Monday at a high-stakes trial in Washington, D.C. over U.S. antitrust enforcers' claims that the company spent billions of dollars to acquire Instagram and WhatsApp to fend off Facebook competitors. The looming antitrust trial will be the first big test of President Donald Trump's Federal Trade Commission's ability to challenge big tech. Zuckerberg responded to questions while seeking to combat allegations that Meta bought the companies a decade ago to eliminate competition among social media platforms where users connect with friends and family. The Federal Trade Commission has pointed to emails in which Zuckerberg proposed acquiring photo-sharing app Instagram as a way to neutralize a potential Facebook competitor, and expressed worry that encrypted messaging service WhatsApp could grow into a social network. The trial could stretch into July. If the FTC wins, it would have to separately prove that measures such as forcing Meta to sell Instagram or WhatsApp would restore competition. A recent report by India's Niti Aayog titled Automotive Industry Powering India's Participation in Global Value Chains outlines India's global value chain potential in the automotive sector, highlighting strategic pathways for global leadership. India's automotive industry is a significant contributor to the nation's manufacturing and economic growth, accounting for 7.1% of the country's GDP and 49% of the manufacturing GDP. The industry ranks fourth globally in vehicle production and employs millions, supporting critical linkages across sectors like steel, electronics and IT. The global automotive component market was valued at $2 trillion in 2022, with $700 billion traded across borders. India's current share in globally traded auto components is approximately 3% or 20 billion, indicating substantial scope for expansion. The Vision 2030 roadmap aims to scale production to $145 billion, exports to $60 billion and generate 2 to 2.5 million jobs. And next we take a look at other stories making news in India today. Indian naval sailing vessel Tarini was ceremonially flagged off from the Royal Cape Yacht Club in Cape Town, South Africa for its final leg to Goa as part of the Navika Sagar Parikrama. Second, the vessel manned by Lieutenant Commanders Dilna K and Rupa A made a scheduled stopover in Cape Town. INSV Tarini is expected to reach Goa by the end of May this year, marking another proud milestone in India's maritime journey. India's Hajj quota has seen a significant rise from 136,000 in 2014 to 175,000 in 2025. The Ministry of Minority Affairs announced that over 1.22 lakh pilgrims will travel under the main quota through the Hajj Committee of India this year. The remaining quota has been allotted to private tour operators, now streamlined into 26 combined Hajj group operators under new Saudi regulations. Registrations are now open for the 52-day-long annual Amarnath Yatra, set to begin on July 3rd and conclude on August the 9th. Pilgrims can register online via the Sri Amarnath Ji Shrine Board website or at over 540 authorized bank branches and designated centers across the country. The India Meteorological Department IMD on Tuesday forecasted above normal rainfall for the upcoming southwest monsoon season from June to September in 2025. India is expected to experience above average monsoon rains this year at 105% of the long period average LPA. The IMD defines rainfall in the range of 105 to 110% of the LPA as above average. Meanwhile, the key climatic factors such as El Nino and the Indian Ocean dipole are expected to remain neutral, creating a favorable environment for a strong monsoon.
Here, southwest monsoon seasonal rainfall from June to September over the country as a whole for this during this year is most likely to be above normal category. You know that above normal category is more than 104% of the long period average of the rainfall. Long period average rainfall is 87 centimeter. So this year, quantitatively, the seasonal rainfall over the country as a whole is likely to be 105% of long period average. Of course, with the model error of plus or minus 5%, this model error will go in the later stage, it will be less and less error as the progress. This year, the El Nino condition is neutral, and also the IOD condition at present over the Indian Ocean, and maybe whatever the climate model is telling also it is a neutral IOD. So both the things are neutral.
April 15th marks the World Art Day, celebrated globally to promote awareness of creative activity and to highlight the importance of art in our lives. The day marks the birth anniversary of artistic genius Leonardo da Vinci. We have a report.
From cave paintings to digital canvases, art has always been a powerful medium of human expression, transcending language, time, and culture. On World Art Day, galleries, museums, schools, and art institutions across the globe host events and exhibitions to honor artists and their contributions. World Art Day also commemorates the birth anniversary of Leonardo da Vinci, the epitome of creativity in both art and science. His legacy reminds us that art nurtures innovation, imagination, and introspection. In India, the rich tapestry of art from classical dance forms and traditional crafts to contemporary installations showcases the country's cultural vibrancy. Artists continue to draw from heritage while experimenting with modern expression. However, in the era of artificial intelligence, the art world faces new challenges. Questions around authenticity, creative ownership, and the value of human imagination are being debated globally. As we celebrate World Art Day, the need to preserve the soul of human creativity becomes even more vital, not just for artists, but for the society as a whole. Kriti Vadhera's report for DD India.
In a productive conversation, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Denmark Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen reaffirmed their commitment to the robust green strategic partnership between the leaders. Both expressed a shared vision for enhancing collaboration across various sectors. Taking to social media platform X, Prime Minister Modi tweeted, and I quote, "Glad to speak with Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen today, reaffirmed our strong support for India-Denmark green strategic partnership and enhancing cooperation across sectors for the benefit of our people. We also discussed regional and global developments of mutual interest." So that's all for this edition of DD India Live. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. Connect with us on our different social media handles at DD India Live. And for those on the go, you can download our DD India mobile app for quick news and updates from India and the world. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja from all of us here in New Delhi. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.